Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuhu. It's your favorite brother Abdul Abin. We with a Black Light News Reacts. Apparently, Turkiye has cut off all ties with Israel, or at least it seems that they are starting to. This is the first so-called Muslim country to outwardly uh, do this thing. Maybe, inshallah, it will be a start of many more coming through. So we're gonna get into this content. This is brought to you by Bada Bing Bada Boom, Raisa Ghazi. All right, shout out to her. Just put this up about a half an hour ago. Bada Bing. Well, Lord, here we're gonna get into it. See what she got to say. Like this, sister.
Of it. And I just want to give you the story of guys. Turkey cut off ties with Israel. First things first, let's get the name right. It's Turkey and not Turkey. We 100% need to put respect on that name because I'm super proud of them. They earned every letter of it. And I just want to give you the story of Turkey because it's not an easy journey for them. They became the first country, which is Muslim, to slam the door shut on Israel. No trade, no airspace, nothing. And that right there means we got to do a full on Turkey appreciation video. And for those of you who want to immediately come for me and say, oh, they're still here and they're in contact with Israel, I think we need to cut them some slack. We need to take into account that it's not easy to completely ban a country from doing trade or getting access to you. Like, that's not something you can do in 1 or 2 days.
We need your help to save the masjid where over 100 Americans have accepted Islam. This is your
So there will be ways where this might still be going on, but inshallah, we have faith in them that they're gonna do the right thing and that they've done it with the right intention. And inshallah, more will follow. Okay, so first of all, I want to say Viva Erdogan because he made it happen. Okay, I need someone to tell me how to say it in Turkish because like I need to say that in like a lot of different languages. I gotta know. Like, this man deserves credits. Please give credits where credit is due. And
Well,
I'm gonna tell you today why it's not easy
I love the energy that she has. Her energy is amazing. Look at her face, the fire, the nar.
for Turkey to do this because, like, this country has got the most problematic history with, I'm so sorry to say this, but the Sabatian Jewish people who have done everything to infiltrate them. And that's what I want to talk about today to also give you an idea of
Infiltration is wild. I wonder what she's talking about. Because I know it's like to be Jewish. It's like some secret thing, and a lot of times in the past, I am still amazed and floored that my mother is haploid is from an Italian Jewish woman from Italy thousands of years ago, which is still so strange to me. So I wonder how I'm just straight up American foundational black. But yeah, so many secrets and different infiltrations or survival mechanisms. I don't want to say infiltrations for everything because I don't think Jews are bad. I think Zionism, backed by mankind on nations that control masses of men, should not be honored as if they are God, i.e., League of Nations, United Nations, Legion of Doom.
about how countries, different countries, not just Turkey, are suffering and struggling with groups of people who are deliberately infiltrating them and trying to bring them down from within. And so we're first going to talk about the Sabatian. I've told you about Sabatian, the Sabbatai Sevi sect, and we're going to talk about this disease, which also has affected Turkey. And so for Turkey to pull
Disease is crazy. She gangster.
this off. What they've done is outstanding. And I need you to understand how deep this goes. And to know that, you need to know their history because their society has been infiltrated for centuries by secret Jewish sects. And I've talked about this before, who pretended to be Muslim. And so, Turkey to now cut off ties when their entire elite is infiltrated still with these Jewish sects, families who are pretending to be Muslim is not nothing, okay? And I just want you to know that this Jewish sect, I've talked about this before, they run a playbook that's like on a different level, and it's like secretly been done, obviously. And these people are called the Dolme. So if you know anything about Jewish people in Turkish society, you should probably know this name as well. And they followed a man named Sabbatai Seifi. He was a self declared Messiah, or he was a Messiah declared by Nathan of Gaza, whose whole brand, Sabbatai Seifi was all about mysticism, like the
Talking about messiahs and stuff. What they mean? They got different dajjals going on out there. Come on, that's
black magic sect of Judaism. And those had some wild and also very perverted rituals. And there's people who have written about this very extensively. Sholem is one of them. I've talked about him in my previous podcast. And so
I heard they also they protect sexual predators when they flee to Israel. Also, some of the Talmud they have some perverted rituals with the children and things like that. And it's crazy about who owns the entertainment. I mean, was Kanye right? Like, it's crazy, and I don't know how. And then me finding out that my mother is of this lineage of the ones that was in Italy, and it's like, what?
there's a connection with Gaza, like I just mentioned, because 350 years ago, Sabbatai Sevi was actually crowned the Jewish Messiah in Gaza by his hype man, Nathan of Gaza. So for this sect, Gaza is their spiritual birthplace, and that's crazy. And if you dig deep into it, you'll also see that Zionism itself, they feel like they were a continuation, or people were saying they were a continuation of what Sabbatai Sevi started. And even Theodore Herzl, the founder of Zionism, he wrote about that in his diary, but he said, I'm gonna finish it this time. And so last time I explained how the Ottoman Empire was taken down, and guess who played a role? The same Jewish families who pretended to be Muslim. They lived in Turkey, and this goes down to
I mean, were they really pretending to be Muslim, or were they just ethnic Jews that reverted to Al Islam? Because we do believe that the prophets were Muslim, even though they weren't called that at their time. That was their definition in their serving point.
centuries ago. Like this is something that's been happening for centuries, okay? And so they organized inside political movements like the Committee of Union and Progress in Turkey, which was pushed by the Young Turk Revolution, and this helped dismantle the caliphate. Like, that's pretty intense. And I actually got into this rabbit hole through Candace Owens. She investigated Sabbatai Sevi's followers and
Candace Owens, I mean, she's down with the get down too. She doesn't want justice for Black Americans. But let's continue.
later on, they became Jacob Frank. So Sabbatai Sevi's followers were later on organized, and they were following this guy named Jacob Frank. And that was this other Jewish Messiah, and he infiltrated the Christian circles. So Sabbatai Sevi infiltrated the Muslim world, Jacob Frank infiltrated the Christian circles, and that's what Candace Owens obviously talks about. And her point was super wild because she mentioned how this tied into the Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte story, saying this whole image connects to this sect because this sect had like obsessions with like committing like sin and like sexual promiscuity. Yeah, it's a crazy story, but you should
Like I said,
check out her
it's
explanation if you want to know more about it, because
like I said again, it's been proven that certain things in the Talmud, which is not the Torah, this is the Talmud. This is kind of like how you find crazy things in hadiths, and that's what non-believers always go straight to. Well, it says in the Quran. No, it says that in the hadiths. Now, the same thing can be said about the Talmud, linking with the Torah, and the Talmud would be things that are added on by people's over 2,000 years. Okay, let's just make that clear.
that ties into what is happening right now with the elite in France. This sect basically believed that through sin comes salvation. So salvation comes not through holiness, but through sinful behavior. And it doesn't stop there. They especially target women in their theology. The divine is part masculine, part feminine. So they believe that
Wow, this is insane because this is what this new age should be talking about. All these people that be having all these new covens and cults and stuff like that. Even the game, even in the 90s, or even how the Christian pastors used to say, "Oh, well, you got to sin to be forgiven," and all this weird evil shit. This has been a set already, planned generations, hundreds of years ago. How long ago? If they're ready, we're going through this. And even her saying giving the freedoms, or pushing the woman to do certain things, and it is just crazy. Did y'all just hear what they said? And then, like, to be freed you must sin. And has a man ever told you that, ladies?
her explanation if you want to know more about it, because that ties into what is happening right now with the elite in France. This sect basically believed that through sin comes salvation. So salvation comes not through holiness, but through sinful behavior.
That is some game for your ass right there. I have heard this even from associates in school trying to talk to women. Okay, I've also went to Creative Christian Character School in Georgetown, Cayman Islands growing up. Um, Even this whole idea is crazy. Even how to separate the man from woman. It says that in the Quran that jinn are able to do that, and that's like modern day psychology. They have books on how to sexually assault women in a way that they would agree to it. It's called seduction. Casanova wrote down these things so he could literally rape women unforcefully, which is where you get the broken hearts and the things like that from. This is insane. I need to find out what he was like for real.
And it doesn't stop there. They especially target women in their theology. The divine is part masculine, part feminine. So they believe that their version of God is like part man, part woman. And that's why they push this idea of everything is like gender.
And that is the Baphomet. I love her little I love her little mannerisms, her little shaking hands. But that's like the Baphomet. That's also the duality things. All these Hotep New Age niggas thinking they talking about chakras, something in India that don't got shit to do with Africa at all. You know what I'm saying? Do you guys see the link into this? I don't know if am I the only one tripping. This is wild.
Right? And they call this feminine side Shekina. You might know a little bit about it if you're into it, but basically, that's why they also push this idea, this sect, that women should be freeing themselves and rebelling against rules to chase their own happiness, even if it means walking out on your husband. It's like total chaos, but it's like disguised as liberation. And so, one of these top scholars who dug into their practices is Gershom Scholem. And he describes how they even swept wives and celebrated festivals with full on like orgies, like very just promiscuous behavior. And that's why they were expelled from Gaza centuries ago because of this behavior. And you can read about this on their own websites, by the way. They talk about this, why they were expelled. I think there's this website called like the Jewish Archives, and there they talk about how they were expelled because they were doing erotic rituals. And they still celebrate Sabbatai Sevi. They still think he's an amazing man, and they also brag that history is gonna come full circle because Gaza, their old, place where they started all of this craziness, will be theirs again.
Yo, hello. Yo, I love her.
And that's how they view it. And that's kind of crazy because if you have to do so many awful things to get back to a place where you were also doing awful things, I don't know if that's something you should be aspiring. So, yeah. Okay, then we're going to talk about some of the Turkish leaders because obviously they are playing a role in this. And I want to talk about Erdogan because I think, one of his biggest achievements is that he allowed women to wear hijabs again in universities. And so Erdogan, he's not just struggling right now to help Gaza be liberated through boycotting Israel, but he also did a lot for Turkey in general. For example, letting women wear hijabs again in university. And I mean, you can compare that to, Ataturk, who was the guy who basically cracked down on religion, like it was like his personal mission. Women with headscarves, they were banned from education. Men covering their heads also banned, and that was like the modernization project people love to kind of like romanticize. But at the heart of it was actually, I would say a hate for Islam. And one thing that I think a lot of people like to forget is that Ataturk, he did go to a Jewish Donmei school. Like a lot of people, they're saying like, oh, it's all hearsay. He wasn't Jewish, but like the fact that he went to one of those Donmei schools, I do think that says a lot. And also the fact that they were like so organized. They're gonna make all these schools and then infiltrate like the minds of the youngest people of a country. Like I don't like that stuff. Like that to me is so calculated and it's so strategic, and it also shows that there's a bit of malicious intent because like I'm pretty sure the parents wouldn't agree with it, not all parents, but then you still kind of like try to taint the minds of some young people who don't know what they're choosing for. Okay, anyways, that kind of reminds me of another story, by the way, the Gulen networks. I'm gonna talk
She talking about some heavy stuff, but her spirit is just so light and just bubbly. It's like it's like you having fun with it. But this is some real heavy shit that she's saying. I just want to put that out there. All right, let me get a like for that one. Y'all like that?
about that more because that's a whole rabbit hole I went down, and it was so shocking. Okay, because yeah, like that's a whole story. I don't know if you know anything about Turkish society, but then you probably know that. Okay, so in Turkey, the Donmei, they created this curriculum where they were trying to modernize the country, obviously, and secularize it. And the Rockefellers, they're pretty known for having done the same thing. They did it worldwide, controlling the curriculum, pushing people away from certain beliefs, and Ataturk, he went through that pipeline of going to a Dolmay school, and then he also changed the country, I wouldn't say for the good. And Erdogan, he reversed it. He opened the doors. Women can go to school with their hijabs. Like he gave women their dignity, and men can cover their heads if they want to. And they should, because, our Muslim traditions are, more beautiful than anything. And these reformers, they could never produce anything that's
They could never. You heard?
as beautiful as this. Okay, so then there's another thing that I like think a lot of people don't know, and that is that Erdogan also brought back the Hagia Sophia back to life as a mosque. I think a lot of people know what Hagia Sophia looks like. It's probably one of the most famous mosques of Turkey, if not the most famous. And during Ataturk's rule, he banned Muslims from praying there. Okay, like that's 1935. Like that's crazy. And so you have to understand the Hagia Sophia was conquered in 1453 when the Muslims they conquered Constantinople, and they basically
Some say there's also a hadith saying that the Banu Ishaq, they didn't necessarily say Israel. They said Banu Ishaq would take over the city that's part water, part land, something like that. I'm not a muhadith nor a hafiz, but something was similar to that. And they're saying that the hadith was saying that. I'm not saying that all hadith are wrong, and I'm not saying none of them don't have any wisdom, and some of them do come to fruition, but it has to be under a fine comb, and then under that comb has to be a fine sifter, and then under that a fine magna glass, metaphorically speaking, to really go through these things. All right, let's proceed.
made it a church, they made it into a mosque. The Muslims did that. And then what did Atatürk do? He actually stripped it of its prayers and he downgraded it to a museum. And so for decades, you couldn't even find a simple prayer room inside this mosque. Like that's how far they went to erase worship from, this beautiful place. And then in 2020, Erdogan, he flipped the script and restored it to what it was always meant to be, a mosque. Alhamdulillah. And so I do want to give him a lot of credits for that. What made me laugh when I started getting into this story is that nobody other than a Turkish Nobel Prize winning author in literature, his name is Orhan Pamuk, he objected against Sophia Hagia, the famous mosque in Istanbul, being used as a mosque again. I don't know if you know this, but the Nobel Prize is a highly Jewish prize. Like, I'm not gonna lie, okay? 22% of the winners have been Jewish, despite Jewish people compromising less than 0.2% of the world's
That is crazy. Not even 1%. I thought it was like 1%.
population. And the thing is, like, I don't know this voluntarily.
Then what about the ones that they don't know about that could be, and they don't know if they're Jew by ethnicity?
It's because I get a lot of hate messages, obviously, and this is something that I think a lot of Zionists comment on my content because they want to show me that we Muslims were not smart enough to get a Nobel Prize, but they Jewish, they are so incredibly smart, and so they do get Nobel Prizes. But let me tell you something interesting about the Nobel
Let me tell you. Okay, okay, Sister Raisa.
Prize. First of all, the founder of the Nobel Prize was also known as the Merchant of Death.
Oh,
The Merchant of Death. Like, why would someone have such an incredibly dark and terrifying name? Someone who sold death? Well, that's because Alfred Nobel was a Swedish chemist and inventor who created dynamite. And so CNBC mentioned in an article that he was named the Merchant of Death, and I could find it everywhere. And so that's the man behind the Nobel Prize that significantly favors Jewish people over Muslims in their awards. And he died in 1896. And as far as I could understand, since 1901, the Nobel
the Merchant of Death is crazy.
Prize has been given out. He himself was not Jewish, but you can find in his story that Alfred Nobel, who invented the Nobel Prize, he wasn't Jewish, but his muse, who was 17 years younger and that he kept around for 18 years, she was Jewish. So what happened to her is her name was Sophie Hess. She basically hooked up with Alfred Nobel from the Nobel Prize, and she kind of toyed him around because she got pregnant of another man.
Oh,
But he still paid for her. And she basically worked in a flower shop as an employee, but she had many wealthy clients. And at that time, Nobel was 43 years old. She was only 26 years old. And tell me this does not give Cash Patel. Like, I don't know about you, but when I
yo, she is funny as hell. Raisa Ghazi. Yo, she is hilarious.
that she was so much more younger. She cheated on him, but kept him around for money. I was like, this sounds like a plan. I'm not gonna lie. And then the fact that then the Nobel Prize significantly favors Jewish people over non-Jewish people, I was like, well, that's probably no coincidence. I guess a lot of people might be wondering, there's so many amazing Muslim people who do tons of great things. Why don't they win the Nobel Prize? Well, that's interesting because a lot of people in the Muslim world, well, several people in the Muslim world did win the Nobel Prize. But I just want you to know that you have to sing a certain tune, a melody to be accepted into the club. And I'm going to give you some of my personal observations. Okay, so there's two authors specifically who have won the Nobel Prize for literature. And both of them coincidentally have written about homosexuality. And that made them eligible for the Nobel Prize. Like, isn't that funny? Like in Turkey, it was this same guy who protested against the Sophia Hagia Mosque becoming a mosque again, and that's Orhan Pamuk. And he played around with the idea that in the Ottoman Empire there was a lot of gayness going on, and he obviously then deserved to get a Nobel Prize. And then the second author who won was I personally read his book, by the way. It was one of three people in the Muslim world who won, and his name is Naguib Mahfouz. And lo and behold, in the 1950s, he started playing around with the idea that gayness was also present in Egypt, very conservative Egypt. What a gift to society. And he went to win the Nobel Prize for Literature as well. And so you have to understand, this was 75 years ago. Then we also have Malala Yousafzai, who is the poster child of Muslims are terrorists and they oppress women, and she also won a Nobel Prize. And she's currently joining Hillary Clinton in making a Broadway musical about how we Muslim women are oppressed. And then Malala, she won a Nobel Prize for peace.
I just found this YouTuber. She going ham. I like her, like her energy, yo. She won all the schminnock. She won all the shesha, all the hookahs. She won all the hookahs, my nigga. Probably drive a G wagon, nigga.
Israel until 6 months after the genocide started because she was being pressured by Pakistan. Otherwise, I don't think she would have said anything. Wow, what a true advocate for peace. I totally understand why she won the Nobel Prize for Peace. Okay, so then a few others who have won a Nobel Prize for Peace. I think there's one guy, his name is Mohammed Yunus, Bangladeshi politician, and he's also facing a lot of charges involving corruption and fund embezzlement, and more than 100 other charges over labor law violations. So, I mean, that's amazing, right? So, if I
Yeah,
would
cool.
switch my content today and I would just focus on something that would serve the Israeli agenda, like, I don't know, all Muslim men are violent, I probably could have a Nobel Prize for peace next year, because that's basically how it works, right? Okay, so, anyways, I just felt that was so funny when I read this guy who's a Nobel Prize winner and then he started criticizing Turkey. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so, yeah, if you need other comparisons about non Muslims, some of the serious nominations which have been accepted by the Nobel Committee is a nomination of Stalin, by the way, Joseph Stalin. And he was the Secretary General of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And he was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Peace Prize. Nobel Peace Prize in 1945 and 1948 for his efforts to end World War. So he genocided. He basically took out millions of people, Muslim Tatars, and he killed at least 45 million Christians, according to this author named Antonio Soki, but also Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He has written about him. Like, this guy has killed millions and millions of Christians and Muslims, and he did did get a nomination that was seriously considered. And so, but yeah, he also ran a Jewish government, right? Because the majority of Bolsheviks were Jewish, but he still was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. So that's interesting. But when Hitler was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, it was seen as a joke because nobody could take it seriously, and it was outrageous, and many people protested, and Hitler killed 11 million people, right? Including the 6 million Jews. So, like, that's a weird comparison. Like, Hitler could not be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, but Stalin, who killed tens of millions of Muslims and Christians, he could. So, I don't really understand that. But then again, it does seem to be a prize that highly favors Jewish people. Anyways, the more you know, right? So, other interesting winners of the Nobel Peace Prize or prize were Fritz Haber, and he's also well known for helping to develop chlorine gas as a chemical weapon during World War One, and he also defended the use of gas warfare during his lifetime. And so, in 2008, Herr Hausen received the prize for physiology of medicine for his discovery of the HPV, which was linked to cervical cancer. But the problem was that AstraZeneca produced the HPV vaccines and it also sponsored the Nobel Prize. How interesting. Two members on the panel that selected Hausen also had ties to AstraZeneca. Like, how corrupt is that? Anyways, then there's a bunch of other people like who are super, I would say, just suspicious, but like I could just get into it. But it doesn't matter. What I can tell you, getting a Nobel Peace Prize shouldn't really be something you aspire if you look at the history of the Nobel Prize.
Mm.
Okay. Anyways, another thing that I think is very interesting to discuss is the coup d'etat, which took place a few years ago in Turkey, and that was something
Turkiye. Put some respect on that letter, sister. Turkiye.
where Erdogan had, loads and loads of his enemies come for him. And, this is a really clear proof that Erdogan has been dealing with a lot of challenges in Turkey, but that, not a lot of people know about that, I think. And so, okay, in 2016, when they committed the coup d'etat, they weren't just trying to kick him out of office, they were literally trying to kill him. And so on the 9th of July 15, tanks literally rolled through Istanbul and soldiers, they stormed the AK party headquarters. Fighter jets were bombing the parliament in Ankara, and the top general, Hulusi Akar, was kidnapped by his own security detail. And even Istanbul's Atatürk airport was crawling with tanks. And so social media went dark. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they were all blocked. Soldiers were everywhere, like all the cities. And in Ankara, they even stormed the state broadcaster TRT, and they made one of the anchors read this statement at gunpoint saying democracy was dead, and that Turkey was now under the Peace at Home Council. Meanwhile, helicopters bombed the hotel where Erdogan was staying, and 40 elite soldiers battled police in the region. Like, this is crazy. Like, this wasn't some small plot. Like, this was a major infiltration. But what people didn't expect is that thousands of Turkish people poured into the streets and the coup forces shot at them, but they didn't back down. And so loyalist soldiers and police fought back. And by the time the sun rose, the coup was crushed. The cost was really heavy though, like 250 people were killed and over 2,000 were injured. And this was over the course of a few hours. So you can just imagine. And, the Turkey people had defeated tanks, jets, and traders. And this does bring us to our next point, and that is Fethullah Gulen. This is the wild part. Both parts in Turkey point to the same culprit behind the 2016 coup, and it was Fethullah Gulen. So basically, Erdogan's party and the opponents, they were like, no, this is the guy who did it because he ran a shadow government inside Turkey, and not just inside Turkey, it was worldwide. Okay. Honestly, I didn't know much about him, but like Turkey has been infiltrated with enemies for a long time. So the fact that they are now choosing to cut off ties with Israel is pretty big because like they've been struggling, and I didn't know about this until recently. Like, I was sitting at the Dubai Mall with a friend having a karak, and I told her about the Ahmadiyya. She's basically Turkish but Dutch born and raised, and I told her about the Ahmadiyya movement, the whole fake messiah thing and the self-proclaimed Muslim reform.
Whoa. Whoa. we're gonna, we're gonna stop her right there. I think. Yeah, no, that was that was a little that was a little wild right there. We gotta give her we gotta give her the four extras on that one. Whoa there. Yeah, had me till you didn't. All right. Okay. I wonder how much of that slander she has going on. Yeah, no, that was crazy.
And he gonna come back. I done give you the dope, smoker. Cub gave you the dope, nigga.